As always, welcome everyone to the Sunday morning in church with Brent Winters. I encourage you to check out Brent's website as www.commonlawyer.com. Brent has a lot of audios you can listen to on various topics, as well as I encourage you to support Brent with the books and booklets he has there. And you can get in contact with Brent through the email there on that site for prayer requests, comments, or questions. So we'll go ahead and open with prayer, and then we'll turn the time over to Brent. Today's date is December 1st. Time's going. Okay, we'll open with prayer, and then we'll turn the time over to Brent. Dear God, thank you for this time. Thank you for this opportunity we have to listen to your word, and thank you for Brent's willingness to share with us what he's learned from you. Just help us to be changed people and willing to be closer to you because of it. Just pray for our country today. Pray for protection of our leaders and their families. Pray for Becky as the health concerns and learning to walk again. Just pray your will be done there. Pray for the situation here in Montana. Pray for unity with the family and wisdom. I pray for confusion of the evil side also. Just now I ask that you would be with us in our relationships, and whatever we do, just help us to honor you with our lives. Now, thank you for this time, and pray again for Brent. Give him wisdom and the words to speak. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And I'm thankful for all you folk that are participating in this, and the men that help keep it going. It means, well, I couldn't do it unless other people helped. And not the way we're doing it. And then all of the participation we have and those that listen. This is important to me. I don't want it to be an entirely one-man show, not at this juncture anyway. Maybe it'll get out of hand to where we can't do what we're doing now, but let's get to the Word of God. The Word of God. As you know, I spend my time, I've said this, that's why I think you know, I spend my time with the Bible, and I spend most of my time trying to perfect the translation of the Bible. Every day I work on it, and always find time to do it, and I've been at it for a number of decades. I don't spend time anymore. I used to spend time reading theology. Theology is a good thing. I don't spend my time with it now as much. Theology is men trying to show how the Bible makes sense and not nonsense. That's what theology is. It's the study of God. Study of God. Religion is the study of man. And your theology, your understanding of who God is, will dictate your religion. Both are important. As I translate and work with the Bible, I try to put it together in a way that makes sense and not nonsense. I'm going to try to do that today some, as I always do. But for some passages from the Bible with which I am convinced you're very familiar. Let's start in Matthew chapter 24. And we're going to start with verse 21. We've read this before, but we're stressing different aspects of what's being said here. This is verse 21, Matthew 24, reading from the Winterized Version. Follow along with whatever version you have. I'll try to read slow. Discipline myself not to go fast. Let's think about what it says. This is Jesus Christ speaking. He says, "For indeed, then befalls a great gauntlet, such like as was not since the beginning of the world order. To this apt time, no, nor ever befalls. And unless those days should be shortened, there should no body of flesh be safe. However, for headway of the picked out ones, that's the elect, those days become shortened. Right then, if any man says to you, behold, here is Messiah, or there, trust it not. For indeed, false messiahs shall awaken, and false law talkers, that's prophets. Prophets are men that talk God's word, they talk His law, His will. What He has revealed to them He's going to do, and shall show great natural signs and supernatural signs. In other words, great signs of control of nature in its natural courses of its laws, and also control of nature by suspending the natural courses of its laws. Natural signs, that's the wind, the wave, the earthquakes, the floods, and supernatural signs, that's turning water into wine and walking on water, things like that. That suspends the natural course of the laws of nature. And these false messiahs, and this is striking to me, these false messiahs shall not only show natural signs, they will show supernatural signs. How is that? Only ones connected with God or the power of God can do that. I'm quoting John Locke. He's the one that said that. He makes good sense. That's good theology, putting the Bible together. Oh, let's go a little further. Given that as both are able, they astray even the picked out ones, the elect. Doesn't say the elect are destroyed. Doesn't say they lose their eternal safety, their salvation. Says here that they go astray. Have you ever gone astray? Are you the elect? Are you God's people? Have you strayed? Well, yes, and yes, I would say of myself. Have I been led down a primrose path? Have I taken a frolic off of the narrow way, thinking I would take a shortcut? Oh, I've done all those things. Looking back, I see it. Verse 25, behold, watch this. These are important words. Behold, looky here, I have forewarned you. Wherefore, given that they shall say to you, behold, he is in the bushland. He's still on the same subject. He's not letting up on this one. He is in the bushland. Who? The Messiah. Go not forth. Take heed. In the secret chambers he is. Trust not. All around, like as the lightning comes out from the east and shines clean to the west, like this shall be the kingly presence of the Son of Man. The Son of Man will not be in a secret chamber. Don't go looking for him in a cave in the wilderness. The Guru Maharaji, he was popular when I was about 18 or 19. No, don't go looking for him, thinking he's hidden. Because when the kingly presence of the Son of Man, the kingly presence, the parousia, translated the coming, it is the kingly presence. It will be as the lightning shines from the east to the west. Now listen, we live in a dark, dark world. Evil is all about us and seems to be getting darker, by analogy. But when lightning strikes in the middle of the night, you've seen it, I've seen it, for a brief second, less than a second, everything, as far as the eye can see, is bright as day, if not brighter. I was with my cousin, Harold. We were north of the house. We each had 2 5-gallon buckets in our hands. 2 5-gallon buckets. They were empty. We'd just carried water. We're headed back down toward the fuel tank. We weren't more than 40 feet from the fuel tank going down the grade. Broad daylight. sun was shining. All of a sudden, without warning, one of the loudest noises I've ever heard, and an awful sizzling sound with it. And Harold, 9 years older than me, I was a teenager, he was in his 20s, had the full force of manly vigor in his body, and he had those two buckets in his hand, and he immediately swung around with centrifugal force, and that one 5-gallon bucket hit me in the back and knocked me on my face. That's what he intended to do. He didn't know what it was. He just knew that it was important that I be gotten down quick. And, of course, after that, we got up. But what I remember was just before he hit me with that bucket, of course, it was too late. The lightning had already struck, and it was right beside us, and we saw where it hit afterwards. And we smelled the sizzling, and I felt the electricity in my body. It was that close. It was coming through whatever moisture was in the air, I suppose. There was a storm coming, and somehow, I don't know how it happened, but before I went down, even though it was broad daylight, the storm was coming, and somehow the lightning got ahead of it. But I remember it was so much brighter when the lightning struck. Lighter than the sunlight of day. And the sun was up, pretty near way up at that time. And that's the way it's going to be when Jesus Christ comes. I don't think he's saying here, he's not pushing this analogy to the limits. You know, every analogy that you use to try to represent something else and show what it's like, you don't want to push it to every detail. And if you do that, then it becomes the same thing. It's not an analogy anymore. An analogy is like something else. It's not the same thing. So that's what he's doing here, and he's making the point. When Jesus Christ comes, here's the point, the single point of the analogy. An analogy, a parable, a simile, a metaphor, a figure of speech always has a single point. We don't try to make it alike at every point. If we do, again, we destroy it. His single point is this: when he comes, it won't be secret. It won't be hidden. His kingly presence when it gets here. The arrival is included in the coming, in that word parousia. It'll be open to all, understandable by all, and knowable, and everyone will awareingly see it and know it. They'll know the presence is here. Now notice it doesn't say that he is here, bodily. Now there may be somewhere else you can show that. I want to stick right here and camp on this. What do we know, as we say on Saturdays, what can we know for sure? It says, we don't want to speculate. That's where you get into all the fantastic stuff. And we want to, first of all, know what we can know for sure. And we can know for sure that this is his presence, his kingly presence. As he said when he left. He left bodily, but he said, lo, I am with you always. Lo, behold, see, be aware. Be aware. My presence is always here. Don't think it isn't. Well, that's what these verses right here are saying. And don't go looking for me in some secret place out in the wilderness or in some secret chamber, some kingly palace someplace. Verse 28, wherever the carcass might be, the eagles shall be led together. Is that true? Wherever the carcass might be, yeah, that's true. Where the carrion is, the dead bodies, the scavenger bird, that's all an eagle is. He doesn't have the dignity of a turkey, by the way. That's why Ben Franklin didn't want the eagle to be our national bird. He's not but a bottom-feeding scavenger. His look is ostentatious compared to the turkey, but the turkey has much more to offer. Not to mention that it's a uniquely American bird. It gives up its life at the end of every year. Not only is he intelligent in ways that turkeys aren't. He's not a bottom feeder, but he provides good food. I like turkey gravy especially, and stuffing. But it is true. This is a true statement. Wherever the carcass might be, there the eagles shall be led together. Shall be led together. Now let me read what I have here. This is a tough set of words to apply. In my humble opinion, I read a lot of things that a lot of men that are much more learned than me talk about what it means, and I sense when I read their words that they're trying to say, I'm not sure what this means, but here's my best shot. It does mean, of course, that the statement is true, but it's a picture. It's an analogy, again. This is Jesus Christ's reference to those following, among others, false yet popular charismatic leaders of pleasure by prosperity. Let me read that again. This is my note in the winterized version. This is Jesus Christ's reference to those following, false yet popular charismatic teachers of pleasure by prosperity. Such men and women, though presenting themselves well, gather about carcasses. Though walking, they reek of death. This common lawyer, that's me, and his brothers, when boys, often saw turkey buzzards circling. Now, back when I was growing up, we didn't have bald eagles around. And there are bald eagles that live where I'm from now, lots of them. You see them pretty often. Why? Well, because people have vacated that part of the country. And where men vacate, wild critters proliferate. And we've got all sorts of wild critters living there that didn't used to live there, but we used to have, and we still do, turkey buzzards. They're all over the country. They're the ones that sit and they're like vultures. They're kind of a vulture, and their neck is kind of crooked, and they're ugly-looking critters, but their wingspan is probably like this. And we'd see them circling. And we would, as we watched them circle above the woods or the edge of the pasture field, we'd calculate what a straight line was below the center, what we perceived to be the center of their circle. And you could kind of get an idea. And then we would make for that place on the ground to see what kind of a critter carcass was gathered there, where the buzzards, rather, were gathering. And we'd usually find one. And we had learned that wherever the carcass is, the eagles, that is the scavenger birds, will be gathered together. But more to Jesus Christ's point here is that one can learn where death and the carcasses are. You can learn where death and the carcasses are by seeing the gathering of the scavenger birds and thereby avoid the places of death. Now that's my take on this verse. Where you see the buzzards, who are the buzzards? Well, the scavenger birds. Oh, here's another point I want to make about the scavenger birds, and this is another note I have here. I'd forgotten this. The word here, translated eagle, eagles, plural, means eagles. It does not mean vultures. It's distinguishable from a buzzard or a vulture. The eagle, which is the bird Jesus Christ speaks of here, the eagle, unlike the rotting, carrion eating buzzard and vulture, feeds only on fresh, killed, and even live prey. That's significant. The eagle feeds on fresh killed prey or live. The vulture and the turkey buzzard, of which I spoke a while ago that we still see around home, they don't care if it's fresh kill. They don't care how old it is. They'll eat it. Jesus Christ is here talking about fresh kills. Fresh. And where there's a constant stream of fresh kills, that's where the vultures are. Application, where men are fascinated and running to false messiahs, false or antichrist, prosperity preachers, or that's one way to say it in our own day. All of the emotional Christianity that defines the Spirit of God as emotion and not as communion with the words of God, through the law of God, by the illumination of the Spirit of God. Where men see that, they're dead. Let the dead bury the dead, said Jesus Christ. You want to know where the dead men are? Look where the vultures are. They're looking for dead meat. Where are they? They're where these men are, these men, these women, these false preachers of a false gospel. That's my take on that verse, and that's applicable right now. Watch for it. It's everywhere. Is it popular? You bet it's popular. It's exceedingly popular. It's everywhere. I see it around me. I have friends caught up in it. Communion with God becomes something other than communion through His revealed will. Verse 29. Right away, after the gauntlet of those days, the gauntlet, the word speaks of a compression. One writer, I think it was Trench. Yeah, it was Trench. He said, this is like little ease, E-A-S-E. Little ease was an instrument of torture in Britain for a long time. There was the Duke of Exeter's daughter. That was the one instrument of torture. Folk called it the Duke of Exeter's daughter because the Duke of Exeter used it to torture people. He was the one that provided it to the Star Chamber. It was a rack. Didn't compress the body. That was used to pull the body apart. And the more pressure that was put on, the more questions were asked. Well, isn't it true? You know, and they know, of course, the people that are being tortured, that if they say it's true and they get the confession they want or the information they want, they may let up on the torture and not disjoint their joints and destroy their lives and cripple them forever. That's the law of the city. The other Inquisition, that's Inquisition, the law of the city as opposed to the law of the land. The other instrument of torture in those ugly days of the Star Chamber and the High Commission of England was called Little Ease. Little Ease was a cage of sorts, but it compressed the person in it to such a degree that they couldn't scratch themselves. They had an itch. They couldn't lie down. They couldn't stand up. Arms down to the side. It was like being tied up in a bag. I remember reading about, and worse than that, to be cowhided. There were two kinds of cowhiding people talked about in America. That's where you were flogged with a whip, or you were tied in a green hide of an animal, such as a deer or a skinned cow, a fresh green hide, tied pretty tight, sewed up, and then as the hide shrunk, it would crush the body. Well, that's what he's talking about here. He's talking about a tough gauntlet. A gauntlet is something you're compressed in, and that's a good translation. There's going to be a gauntlet, a tribulation. It will tribulate you. It'll make it hard. The sun becomes darkened in those days. This is right after the gauntlet, not during the gauntlet. After the people will say, the Messiah is here, the Messiah is there, the vultures will come and try to skin people. Oh, one other illustration of this vulture thing, it's all over. I had a family member that was a prisoner during World War II in a Nazi prison camp. And he said he remembered, they were starving, their fingernails were falling out. The Geneva Convention said that prisoners had to be taken care of, it still says this, taken care of on the same level, by the same care that you care for your own soldiers. So the Germans, they had soldiers. Their soldiers were pretty much starving by that time, so it was the standard in the prison camps. American prisoners were starving, as well as British and French prisoners. Fingernails falling out, hair falling out, skinny as rails. Really in bad shape. Well, all of a sudden, gunfire was heard. All of a sudden, the German guards disappeared. You hear firefights going on around you. Then all of a sudden, an American tank crashes through the gate, and then there come men, American men, and then there come soldiers, and they liberated the camp. And General Patton was there, and he said he saw Patton standing up in a jeep. He made a short speech to the men, told them what they should do, and they're going to bring. They had crates of oranges on trucks following the army. Well, with following the army were crates of oranges on trucks and other food, and of course they were advised not to eat too much at first. But then, following right after that, were the vultures. He said they were vultures. They were men that they were, and again I say this just as a fact of history, they were Jewish people who came to exploit the American prisoners with opiates, drugs, prostitution, and investment schemes. Drugs, prostitution, and investment schemes. And drugs, prostitution, and investment schemes follow armies because soldiers, and those soldiers were going to get a lot of money because they hadn't had a paycheck in over a year, so they were going to have money to invest. And they were weakened, their blood sugar was down to 0, and here came all of these scavengers following in the train of the American army. So it happens, with respect to the Messiah, it happens in many other ways. There are always those that are, and they're looking for people who are dead or next to death. People that are gullible, they're like carcasses. They may be fat, but emotionally or spiritually stupid, uninformed. Their conscience doesn't know the Word of God. He's giving you warning here. Behold, I have forewarned you of this. Verse 30. Well, right away after the gauntlet of these days, the sun becomes darkened and the moon shall not give her light and the stars shall fall from the sky, and the potential of the sky becomes rocked. We talked about that last time. It will actually rock. Not shake, rock. That's what the word means. And then shall appear the sign. The sign. Not the Son of Man yet, the sign of the Son of Mankind in the sky. Who's the Son of Mankind? That's one of the names for Jesus Christ. He's called the Son of God. And he is called not a Son of Mankind, but the Son of Mankind, because he's fully God and fully man. In the sky. Not on the land, in the sky. And then shall all the clans of the land mourn. And they shall behold the Son of Mankind, oh, here he is, coming upon the clouds of the sky with ableness and with great deemed worth. In other words, people will deem him worthy. Translated glory. Great ableness? It doesn't say that he'll come and do great things. It's not saying that yet. He will come with that ability, that patent, or that latent, as opposed to patent power. Latent power is power that's there, but you can't see it. Patent power is power expressed, exposed. He'll just come. The clans of the land. What land? Doesn't say. The land. Verse 31, and he shall send his agents with a great war trumpet sound. Not just a trumpet. The trump shall sound. This is a war trumpet. Again, that's what the word means. And they shall gather together his picked out ones from the four wind gusts, from the far ends of the skies until their far ends. Everywhere. The picked out ones. What are the picked out ones? Again, the elect. The ones God has chosen. You say, I don't understand that. I don't know anybody that does. I just know it's true. Oh, I understand what it says. That's not a problem. The picked out ones, that's what it says, picked out from among others. So we can know what God's telling us. We just can't know everything about it. He tells us what he wants us to know. From the far ends of the skies until their far ends. Moreover, now he stops. He's given them some hard truth. He's given us some hard truth. Moreover, learn a parable of the fig tree. Learn a parable of the fig tree. Remember, a parable, para, beside, like paragraph. Para, parallel, two lines beside each other. Parabole means para, beside, bole, to throw something down beside something else so we can compare and contrast it and make the contrast and make it jump out at us in a more meaningful way. Putting something we understand, throwing it down, bole, down beside something we don't understand yet, and then we see the similarities, and then we understand. So he's going to use something they understand. What do they understand? They understand fig trees. Fig trees all over that part of the world. And he knew they understood that, so he takes this fig tree story, this fig tree set of facts, he's going to put it down and compare it to something he wants them to understand. When his branch, the word fig tree is a masculine word, so it's often translated his branch. Could be translated its branch. When its branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, ye know firsthand that summer is near. Now, I can relate to that. Where I'm from, the trees bud in the spring. When I'm out in California, I don't see that so much because the trees out here are palm trees. If you're down in the valley, there's some palm trees. And you get up in the mountains a ways, and they're all evergreen trees with a few exceptions. Well, back where I come from, most all trees are deciduous. That means they lose their leaves in the fall, and then they bud them out in the spring. Well, that's the way it is with these fig trees. They lose their leaves in the fall. So when they bud out in the spring, you know firsthand summer is near. And likewise, ye, whenever you should see all these things, know firsthand that it is near. It, what? Had said you. It is near upon doors. Plural. Upon. Against. The translations say at the door. Well, there is no definite article. It just says upon doors. At? No. The word means upon. Against. Pushing against the doors. And likewise ye, whenever you should see these things upon the doors. Verse 34, amen, amen, rock solid. That's what amen means. Unmovable. I spell it out to ye, plural, that this round of offspring shall not play out until all these things should happen. In other words, this generation of events, which we had talked about last couple of times, once this generation starts, it won't play out until all these things should happen. To stress again what we brought up last week, when he says generation here, he's not referring to our idea of generation, which is first generation, this set of children, second generation, this set. That's not what the word means necessarily. It can be applied to that. If I generate children, if my brothers and I generate children, then all of those children are of the same generation, if I use it in that sense. But if I use it in the sense of my brothers and I have generated children that generated grandchildren, well, that's all my generation. I generated all that in the verb form, see. This generation used in the verb form, not in the noun form. Used in the sense of something that has been generated by the force of the generator. Who's the generator here? The maker of heaven and earth. He generates this. He, as we used to say, ginning things up a little bit, getting them ginned up. They've been in cold iron, to use the things I used to hear in the oil field. That stuff's in cold iron. What does that mean? It hasn't got any energy applied to it yet. Let's gin it up. Let's fire the boiler, the old men used to say. Let's get some steam to it. And once it gets that generation going, whether it's electricity or steam or natural gas or whatever it is to make the engine run, it communicates power to other things, and that generation keeps coming until it plays out. Abraham Lincoln's family played out. His generation has stopped. But he says here, this will play out too. All of these events that I'm telling you about will play out. They've been put in motion. You know, it's the idea it's a law of nature. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. We learned in high school, I hope. Isaac Newton said that. He didn't invent the idea. He just observed it and put it to words. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. I remember learning that in grade school in the 4th grade, and the teacher said, when you step out of a rowboat, if you've been fishing, you pull it up on the shore, and you jump out, and jump on the shore, probably the rowboat, unless somebody's holding it, will slide back in the water a little bit, unless it's firmly up on ground, at the bow of it. And I thought about that. I said, yeah, we got a rowboat out in our pond. Norm Galvin comes over and goes fishing, and I've had that happen. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. God has acted. He has expended his energy. The arm of the Lord has set in motion. You know, what the deists say is true to this extent. God is the prime mover. He's the first mover of all things. He set all things in motion, and the laws of nature are in motion. And his energy keeps it in motion. But it plays out. It doesn't. It plays out in this sense. The energy that he's put into it dissipates and becomes scattered. As it becomes scattered, we say it plays out. It doesn't disappear, it just plays out. Sky and land, verse 35, shall play out. However, my proven words, my word, and the word logos, my proven words, no, emphatic. I'm giving the winterized version. No has not the ability to play out. It might. Might means might. That's the way I translate it. I'm a little uncomfortable with that. It might not play out. That probably leaves the wrong impression. The idea here is it will not play out. However, not even one man knows by evidence about that day and hour, not even the angels from the skies, except my Father alone. And we talked about Jesus Christ had chosen. Chosen to, this is his manhood. He has set aside aspects of his godhood. And one of those is omniscience, knowing of all things, anything that ever could be known, and not be taught anything. He laid that aside at certain points. He does so here. For indeed all around, like as the days of namely Noah, likewise shall be the kingly presence of the Son of Man, the Son of namely mankind, Son of Man, the Son of Adam. For indeed, like as in the days that were before the flood, getting close to the end of what I want to say here, they were eating and drinking, wedding and being wed, until the day that Noah entered into the ark. And they knew not firsthand, verse 39, they, all the people on the earth, they knew not firsthand until the flood came. Why didn't they know firsthand? Well, I'll tell you why they didn't know firsthand. The Bible makes it clear they'd never seen rain before. It had not rained upon the land, upon the faces of the earth. God had so made it that way. There are many theories, and a theory is something that has some fact behind it. It's not just a speculation as to why that's true, and many of them are viable in my view, but we just know this for sure. There was no rain, so they didn't know firsthand what was happening. When the rain began, it said that a dew came up and watered all of the earth. Remember that from the book of Genesis? They did not know firsthand until the flood came. Then they knew firsthand. And watch this, and here's one of the key phrases that I want to camp on. And hoists everyone away. That's what it says. Hoist, what's hoist mean? It means to lift. The word that I think gets this best. There are other words in the Greek New Testament that mean to lift. The idea here is to hoist, to push up. Well, isn't that what water does? If something floats, it gets under it and it hoists it. Did it hoist the ark? Yeah, it hoisted it. It got under it. It didn't just lift it. Yeah, it lifted it, but more particularly, the word hoist has a more particular meaning that means to lift up. That's what this word means. So that also the kingly presence of the Son of Mankind. And Dan, if you're there, oh yeah, we've got it here. I have to scroll mine because I've made some changes. So that the king, oh there it went, my scrolling released. So that the kingly presence of the Son of Man, the Son of Mankind, shall be. Okay. The flood came and hoisted everybody up. Okay, I got it. Dead bodies floating everywhere. I got it. Ark floating. I got it. So also the kingly presence of the Son of Man shall be. So he's saying the kingly presence of the Son of Man will hoist people. Then he unpacks a little more about the meaning of this hoisting that occurs when the presence of the Son of Man is here. Here it is, verse 40. Two shall be in the field. The one becomes taken from alongside, and the one forgiven. Now this is the literal. I know the King James says, and a lot of the other translations, one is taken and the other is left. One is taken and the other is left. Is that a possible translation? Yes, but it misleads entirely. When you say the other is left, or one is left, that gives me the impression, as a speaker of English, that one is left behind. One is, as the famous series says, left behind. One is left over. One is a remnant. The old concept of a remnant, which is throughout the Bible. God's people are the remnant. There are few compared to the rest of the world. One is taken, one is left. And I read that. All my life I've read that. And I said, well, that sounds like, oh, that's just left over. He's left behind, left over. He's the remnant. And then this is applied as I've noticed. Tell me what you think. I've always told, just heard, and it was just assumed. I wasn't taught it. Those things weren't taught where I went to church, but everybody assumed it pretty much. It was the popular point of view that this was the rapture, where one man is taken and the other is left. Two grinding with the mill. Two grinding with the mill, using a mill to grind. One is taken from alongside, and one is left. The word translated left is not the word for remnant. It's not the word for leftover. It's not the word for left behind. I looked at that word again this morning, that Greek word. I thought, boy, that's a familiar word. And again, the paradigm is so stuck in my mind, and it is with most people, because of the dispensational culture in which we live, that left behind or left over. But the word was so familiar to me. This is a familiar word. What's the matter with me? I'm not making the connection here. It occurs hundreds of times in the New Testament. It's one of those kind of words that every first-year Greek student knows. And it's the word translated in the Bible, forgive. Forgive. Forgiveness. Let me plug that in here. And this is the winterized version. It's pretty much word for word. Maybe a little clumsy, but here it is. The one, not the one, there is no definite article, just one. One becomes taken from alongside, and one forgiven. Two grinding with the mill. One is taken from alongside, and one forgiven. I'll end with this. It seems to me, and again, I come back to the words. And even if they don't make good English, I try to understand them the way the reader would understand them in the day when it was written. We'd said before that throughout the Bible, God's people do not escape trouble. In this world, Jesus Christ said, you shall have trouble. Neither do they escape tribulation. No, they go through the fire. The Hebrew boys went through the fire, not around it. The tribulation. God's people don't go around it, they go through it. No doubt you've been through compressed places, gauntlets. I have. I didn't get to go around them. And we knew it. We got to the point with some of them, they were really ugly, and we just said, well, this is fated. Fate? Yeah, that means this is what God has decided I'm going to do. And your charismatic friends will tell you, no, God never does anything evil to anyone. The devil does that. No, God does those things too. He permits the devil to do it sometimes. He causes the evil persons to do things that are hard on people, his own people. He promises to be hard on us. And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's true. No pain, no gain. No pain, no gain. That saying is true. But he'll get you through it, and it'll be for your good when it's over. Take heed and be happy when people persecute you, said Jesus Christ. But here, the people, the man, the one that is taken, it appears, is the one that is not forgiven, and one is left. Well, what happened in the days of Noah? One was in the ark. There were 8 persons in the ark, and everyone else perished. That's a picture of the people, of the proportion of God's people to those that are not God's people. I'm not saying it's a numerically accurate proportion. It's just a picture, a likeness, that many are called, few are chosen. Broad is the way to destruction, and many that go thereby, few there are that find the narrow way to life. And I throw that out for your consideration. I find that people that talk about this, they don't know what it means. Most men don't. I don't care how learned they are. And they then plug this into a system, such as dispensationalism. They say that's what it means. They use the system to foist upon any particular fact the Bible communicates, and they say this causes it to mean that. That's not the way the Bible works. That's not sound interpretation of any writing of legal significance, no matter what it is, whether it be a statute in your state, an ordinance, or the Constitution of the United States, or Magna Carta, or a contract, a writing of legal significance. No, you don't take a system and foist it upon the meaning. You first find out, what does it say? And then you say, I know this for sure. What do I know for sure? I know for sure one is taken from alongside the other one who is forgiven. That's what I've concluded I know for sure. Is it possible it could be translated otherwise? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. It's possible. But that doesn't mean that I have to go with that translation. So I add that in the end. I say you should not build a whole doctrine, though, of left behind on something that is dubious in its translation. Clearly, it can be translated just the way I said it. That's the better way to say it, I suppose. And what is Jesus Christ trying to show here? Well, let's move on. One other verse. Stay ye awake, therefore. Stay awake, because ye know not by evidence what kind of hour your Lord comes. Know firsthand, though, that given that the head of the household had known by evidence in what kind of watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have allowed his household to be broken into. Listen, who is Jesus Christ? This is theology. Remember, religion is what man does in response to theology. So right now we're talking about theology. Who is he? Well, let's go back to the Old Testament briefly. He's the angel of death that skipped over the houses of God's people that were evidence of the blood that covered them, their sin. Who's the angel of death? I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say, well, I know that God does these things. He says so. He says, I do this. I am the Lord. The angel of death is His angel, whether you hold that it's Jesus Christ, that's what I hold, the angel of death is Jesus Christ, because he has been given all power of judgment, and that is the picture. And when we take the Lord's Supper, we are to remember that picture. Who's coming here? The judge is coming. Who is he? He's been given all authority. He's the second member of the Godhead. Jesus Christ, the Son of mankind, is coming. He's at the doors, pressing upon the doors. Be awake, watch. Don't be caught flat-footed, not doing his will when he comes. Why? Will doing his will save you? No. But it is the evidence. He uses evidence. It is the evidence of who you are. You're awake. Your hat is on your head, like the children of Israel, the sons of Israel. By the way, the translation is the sons of Israel, not children. The sons of Israel, hat on head, staff in hand, shoes on feet, eating bread that didn't have time to raise, unleavened, as a picture of being ever ready to flee the place of judgment. Get out of the way. Wherever you are, get out of the way and know. And one more, just to say it again, the importance of this. Jesus Christ told people this. We're reading what he said. When the judgment came through the hand of Titus and his son, the Roman general, they saw it coming. The people in Jerusalem who were followers of Jesus Christ, said, I see what Jesus Christ said. I'm getting out of here. They were awake. They were alive. Be awake. And they left. Hundreds of thousands. And saved their lives by doing what he said. They got out of the way of judgment. Judgment came as they came down from the south and conquered town and village, and they knew they were coming to Jerusalem. And the Jews who rejected Jesus Christ as the bastard son of a Roman soldier and a Samaritan, to put it bluntly, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And they were either slaughtered by the hundreds of thousands or sold into slavery by the hundreds of thousands throughout the Roman Empire. May God add his blessing to the unpacking of his word. He wants us to read it and know what we can know for sure. Dan, back to you.
Thank you, Brent. Star 6 to get into the queue. For anybody that has a question and comment.
Now,
did you get any on your email questions?
No, I didn't. But I did get a request last week from Randy. And I want to say to Randy, he had asked me to cover a particular subject. And the subject, I remember, was transhumanism. And I want to make sure, after I got to looking into it, and I did look into it quite a bit, and you can do that on the internet, and boy, did I find a lot of stuff. I said, I'm not going to talk about this until I know more particularly what it is that Randy meant by what he said, because after I read it all, and listened to it all, I said, I'm not sure maybe where to go with this. So we can do that, but I should have asked, but I thought we're not in any hurry. I'll ask Randy next time, and I'll cover this. If that is the word, transhumanism, Randy, please let me know. I do want to get with you and find, and maybe Randy, if Randy's on, I think he is. Thought I saw him on there. He would like to come on, or I'd invite him to come on and say some words about it to stimulate our thinking about it, and maybe that would give me some direction too. If not, we'll talk later. I can call and talk to you about it.
Yeah, go ahead, Randy. You can unmute yourself, I believe.
I think I'm unmuted.
Yep, go ahead.
It's transhuman. I didn't catch all of it there, but the transhumanists are trying to claim in the immortality. You know, between the artificial intelligence So we can do that. Now we can take our intelligence, our mind, will, and emotion, and download it into this computer, and then put that into the mechanical body that will never rust, fail, moth-eaten. So we will be immortal.
Okay, I get where you're going, and I remember this phrase, download. One fellow said we're getting so we can download our minds into a computer, and I thought that might be a little much. But what I hadn't caught, and all that I listened to, was the push toward immortality. I see where you're going. Now that I know that, maybe we can talk about that more later. And
yes.
Okay, I get it. I get what you're saying. The whole Frankenstein idea.
Right, and they're the institutes of higher ignorance are actually having classes on this and lectures and seminars and all. You know, this is a course you can go take at the indoctrination center, and it's just a total denial of the Creator, that we are created. Now there's the whole this goes back to evolution, that we're this is our next step in our evolving to the higher plane.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I see the trend toward which you're looking, and I did not run into the immortal thing. Maybe I didn't look far enough, but obviously that's part of it. I get it. And in history we see this. This is not new. And I want to chew on that a little bit. I know what you're saying. Well, Brent, haven't you thought about this? And the answer is no, I haven't much. Not that. Now,
well, you've even got the rich, okay, are having blood transfusions from the blood of young people. That college students are going out and selling their blood so that it can be transfused into the old guy, rich man, in his tower up there on around Central Park to further their life.
Oh, you're not exaggerating. I have read some of this. The Rockefellers. Somebody told me this Rockefeller that died recently, he was 100 and something, 104 or 2 or 6 or something. He had
101.
101, okay. Had something like 7 heart transplants. Have you read that, or is that just me?
I haven't read that.
Yeah, I know he had more than one, but somebody said, no, it's 7. Now that seemed like a little much. I thought, how could man survive all that? But we all want to live as long as we can. The fountain of youth of, what was that Spaniard's name that came to Florida? What?
De Soto?
Ponce de Leon.
Ponce de Leon.
You started to say it. Things I learned in high school come back to me now. They were looking for the fountain of youth. And they really believed it was possible. And how many places are there in America where rejuvenating fountains are and people made fortunes with them? I live next to one at home. I've been to one in near Rawlins, not far outside of Rawlins, Wyoming.
Saratoga, Wyoming.
Saratoga. And they're still there, and they're still in use. And there are rejuvenating springs in, little town where Susan's dad, or her granddad migrated there back when Texas was just being settled. And they set up a little town, and 2 families came together, and there were springs there, still are. And they were rejuvenating springs. And people came there to be rejuvenated. All of that's very much a part of our history, probably all over the world, and even in the book Revelation, when it talks about you're neither hot nor cold, talking of the water there, I'll spew you out of my mouth. Well, the water there was popular in that part of the world as rejuvenating water. It will lengthen your life.
Lourdes in France.
Okay. Well, good. I don't know of that place. I suppose it's the same thing you're saying.
Right.
Well, yeah, my mind's now coming, expanding. You're expanding my mind into what you're thinking a little bit. I get it. And no, that's very much a part of human history, and it's an attempt to get something outside of what God, the remedy God has provided for mankind. We can talk about that, and if there's other things that you know about it, obviously you've looked at it for a while and have come up to your own conclusions, and you can give those to us. But I'll come at it from that angle a little bit and see if I come up with anything. Go ahead, Randy.
That's all I had, and I can't run the board. Our internet's down, so
You're on the phone, apparently.
I'm on the phone, yes.
Well, I'm glad you are. I'm glad you are. Yeah, this internet thing out in the middle of nowhere, sometimes even right next to the Silicon Valley, you can't get a signal, believe it or not. I've been there. So what's the difference? But anyway, it'll come back, Lord willing. Dan, anyone else in the queue?
Star 6 to get into the queue.
Oh.
Whoops. There, sorry about that.
At least you know how to fix it real quick.
Star 6 to get into the queue.
While we're waiting for somebody to get in, I have plans when I sit down on Sunday like this of what I want to go through. Seldom do I ever get through any more than about a third of it. We've been talking about the Nephilim and Genesis 6:4, and then also I mentioned 2 Peter chapter 2, which tracks right along with the book of Jude, which tracks along with Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. And I've listened to all sorts of, and read in the past, I've been trying to decipher all of the information I could about the Nephilim. While we're waiting, I'll make a couple of comments, unless somebody's in. We're still nobody in? Dan?
Not at this point.
Okay. I want to make a couple of comments, not to be critical of men and certain individuals in any way that would be ugly, of course. But when it comes to what the Bible says, I cite certain people and I say, watch this person. Two people I have in mind that are Hal Lindsey and Chuck Missler. Chuck Missler and Hal Lindsey I've been familiar with for many, many years. Hal Lindsey, I remember when I first found out about Hal Lindsey back in 1973, I believe it was, or 2. Might have been 2 when I first saw a copy of the book, The Late Great Planet Earth. He was a young man then. By comparison today, I think he's 90 years old this year. I've known a lot of people that have gone to church and known him. I've never met him. He seemed like a real nice fellow. Every time I've heard him talk, he's never mean to people or ugly. He knows quite a bit about the Bible. He's put in a lot of time learning under men that were smarter than him. He went off to Dallas Seminary when he was a young man and graduated. But Hal Lindsey is in a system that has, and a point of view that has exploded, especially after the war, the 1967 war in Israel. And his theme has been that Israel are the chosen people of God. They're coming back, and we don't want to criticize them in any way. And Chuck Missler, who is now gone, I think he passed away this last year, he held to the same opinion. He said things like, a Jew can be a Christian, and he doesn't have to stop being a Jew. That's one of their main themes. He and Hal Lindsey and Chuck Missler are both, and they're friends, or they were until Chuck passed away. I was introduced to Chuck Missler back in about 1982, maybe 81, along in there, and I was in California at the time, and Chuck Missler was a well-known teacher at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, in Southern California. That put me off a little bit because I wasn't in that crowd. That's a pretty emotional, charismatic crowd, very much so, as a matter of fact. And Chuck Missler is a 1956 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and an engineer all of his life, an engineer in the defense industry after he got out of the Navy. And he understands a lot about engineering and science, and some of his explanations, I've listened to him, he's all over the YouTube, some of his explanations about dimensions are profound because they're so simple, so clear. And his explanations about the capabilities that we have in engineering with weapons, he really understands a lot. And he understands a lot about the Bible, too. And he knows a lot about the Bible, and he studied it very hard. So I don't believe that his motives, I shouldn't say, I don't know that his motives are nefarious. I've had people tell me they are. Same thing with Hal Lindsey. He's made a lot of money over the years talking about what he talks about. Does that mean he's right? No, not necessarily. And as a matter of fact, I advise people to be careful of these two men. Not because they're bad men at heart, not because they're nefarious by design. I don't have the liberty to say that because it would be speculation. I don't know. But I will say for sure that I believe their doctrine is wrong. And what pushes their doctrine is the whole idea that when you become a Christian, you can retain all your paganism. That's what the Church of Rome has said for all the centuries of its power. That's why it has all the paganism in it. It has. And all of the trappings of Babylonianism. That's why when you go to Mexico and South America and the Philippine Islands and Vietnam, you go to those places and they have Romanism, but then they have all of their pagan animism with it too. And they practice it with a fervor. Why? Because Rome said when you become a Christian, you don't have to stop being whatever else you are. Well, that's very attractive to people. And when you say to Jews, well, you don't have to stop being Jews either. You can retain all your Jewishness. And that's not what Jesus Christ said. That is not what Paul the Apostle ever said. Paul the Apostle said just the opposite. And he said it over and over and over again. When you become a Christian, everything becomes new. And all the trappings of paganism should show slowly, if you're a Christian, if you're born from above, God will show you to push all that away. Mark Twain wrote a piece way back in his day, 140 years ago. Just a little essay. And the name of it was, Why Does the Jew Insist Upon Being a Jew? And in those days, much more so today, but still today too. And in our past also. They suffer, they claim, they suffer because of their Judaism. Well, it's true. You're going to follow that kind of teaching, people aren't going to like it, and it's going to come to a head sooner or later, and it's probably going to spin out of control, as has happened several times in the history of the world. But along with all that comes the system of theology, the system of the dispensations that is foisted upon simple verses like this to say that it means one thing when it may or may not. And I want to stress again these verses when I say here that one will be taken and the other forgiven. What does that mean? Well, it certainly takes away the idea of dispensationalism if it's understood that way. But let's say that it's possible to translate it another way. And I hasten to add again, it is. But at the same time, if it is possible, it can be translated another way, or this way, that's no place to set solid doctrine. No, you understand this passage, if it's a little bit dubious and you're not sure, and that's true of this verse, you must understand it in light of a verse on the same subject that is clear as crystal. And that's what I want to try to do here. Certainly, it is not something to rest the theology or the teaching of the rapture on. I say theology. Yeah, it could be a theology, I suppose. Well, Ben, if there's nobody in the queue, we won't have a long day today. Is there anybody there?
I'm not seeing it. We do. Greg came into the queue. There was several things in the chat too.
Oh, I better check. I like the chat. I'm not in the habit of looking. Let me look. Well, I don't have much here. I'm not getting it for some reason. Let me try that again.
Oh, maybe they're just sending it to me.
No, now I've got it. Now I've got it. Oh,
Okay.
Who's in the queue right now?
Greg right now is in the queue.
Okay, Greg, hang on just a minute. And in deference to you and others that have said things, I want to read what they've said here without giving names. One fellow says, we have a large avenue here in Atlanta named Ponce de Leon. It's a stone's throw from me, from my house. Another fellow says, are you talking hybrid people, machine combos? That's what I was talking about, and I think Randy was too. Hybrid people, machine combos, yeah. You know, having an eye put in that can see great distances, a mechanical eye, those things are real. They're happening. Is that wrong? Well, we can talk about that. But Randy was stressing the idea that once you have all of this equipment in your body, you could live a longer time, they're saying. You could live forever, live 100 years or 1,000 years if you have a heart that never stops beating. That's the idea. But more than that, Randy was talking about immortality, not that you just live longer. People live longer if they save their lives and take care of their hearts and maybe have surgery when they need it and have a cancer cut out. All those things are true to varying degrees. Nothing wrong with that, don't believe. This fellow says people give their reproductive material also. What are they doing with that? That's a good point. I did read about that too. Matt, this is Matt. Matt told me by email that I could mention his name no matter what he says. Well, Matt, if you change your mind, let me know. This is Matt that asked this question and brought this up. People give the reproductive material also. What are they doing with that? That's a good question. Good question. This question needs to be answered. And I have read about that when I was looking through that this week. There are, let me add this too, what I heard this week too. Again, this came from Chuck Missler. And Chuck Missler researches a lot of facts. I don't agree with his conclusions, but he talks about abductions. And by his estimation, between 1% and 3% of the population of the United States claim to have been abducted by aliens. Now, I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but a lot of people believe that. And there are aberrations that I've seen things that I don't understand. UFOs, unidentified flying objects. I couldn't figure out what they were. I've seen them right close to me. I can remember times in Indianapolis seeing those things. Well, right downtown, by the way. Abductions, people say they're abducted. And the thing that goes along with these abductions is, in many, many cases, the harvesting of reproductive material. The harvesting of reproductive material. If that's true, does that have any bearing on Genesis chapter 6, verse 4? And people like Missler have carried this out to a great conclusion, using a lot of details. Let me get back to what else he says here. Here's another fellow says, they say people with knee and hip replacements make you transhuman already. Trying to make it seem easily accessible and innocuous and to disarm folk. I see his point entirely. When I first got to looking at this week at the behest of Randy, the first thing I thought was, well, what's wrong with a knee replacement? That makes you more mechanical human. I have a friend who fell into a combine header while it was running. I say a friend, well, this guy I grew up with. We were never really close friends, but we knew him. He worked at John Deere. He knew a lot about combines. He was running one through the tests, and he leaned back on what he thought was a rail, and the rail wasn't there in front of the combine cab, and he fell into that big header and those things are designed with augers, where the augers pull everything that goes into the header to the center and then up into the combine. Well, wasn't for long he was in the center, and his body, fortunately for him, feet first, was going up into the combine, and those great big steel teeth, this big around, don't break, were coming around and just pulling him in. How he lived through that, I don't know. Tore one leg clear up. He never got it back. His body lost a lot of blood, and I forget, it was an enormous amount of units of blood were put into him to get him to the hospital. But now he has a leg that is mechanical, and it's designed in such a way that when the energy from his thigh, what's left of his thigh, throws his thigh forward, that energy is then transferred to a mechanical device in his knee that throws his lower leg forward. And he's able to walk and get along pretty good. Does that make him the bionic man? That leg probably won't wear out as quick as his does. It would have otherwise. What else is said here? This fellow also says, not only is that land coming into being in 1947, Eric, no, that's not. Okay, let me read this. Not only is that land coming into being in 1947 not divine of the Creator, that land, speaking of the land of Israel, it's an abomination created by the English-German royals and Rothschild bankers. And he says, read the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration, you can look that up, but yeah, it's an important declaration that the people in Britain, Lord Rothschild himself very recently said that this is what enabled what we call the State of Israel. And it came through the British government. And then he says, divine right of kings, folks, and Pharisite lenders. Pharisite lenders. During that time, Hal Lindsey himself makes this point. During the time that the nation Israel, not the nation, no, the nation called the State of Israel, was formed in 1947, the great dispensationalist Bible teachers of America, namely Harry Ironside and a few others, but Harry Ironside was probably the best known. He was on the radio a lot from that day forward. He was pastor of Moody Church in Chicago for years. He said this gathering in Israel in 1947, and he was alive, and he was a dispensationalist, the leader of the dispensationalist movement. One of the de facto founders of Dallas Seminary. I'm not saying he was there when it happened, but he was part of that crowd. He said that this cannot be the gathering of which the Bible speaks. This state of Israel is not of God. J. Vernon McGee, who is now long since gone, radio Bible teacher for years, decades, he's still on through the Bible radio. He was a disciple of Harry Ironside. J. Vernon McGee always said, time I heard him teach, and I used to listen to him a lot from the time I was 14, clear up through, I used to listen to him at home when I was on the transistor radio when I go to bed at night. And I would listen to him, and he would say that the gathering in Israel of our day, J. Vernon McGee, the gathering of Israel, in Israel of our day, of people calling themselves Jews, cannot be the gathering that the Bible tells of, because the gathering the Bible tells of is a gathering of belief and not unbelief. So even the dispensationalists are saying that. But now, Hal Lindsey and Chuck Missler, for example, are saying, but the gathering is now becoming a believing gathering. There are messianic congregations of Christians in Israel. And you can be a Christian and retain your Talmudism, your Jewishness. That's Talmudism. That's not true. That's the problem. But they have to concede that this gathering, and they have conceded, if the Bible's true, this gathering is not the gathering of God's people. Whoever these people are, it's not a gathering of belief. I should remind myself of that more often, that the leaders of dispensationalism have said that, but even dispensationalism has now left that and ignore all that and say they're going to build the temple. Well, if they build the temple, they're going back into Judaism. There is no reason to build this temple of stones. The Bible makes that clear too. We are the temple. Well, Dan, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Anybody in the queue?
Yes, yes. Okay, Greg, you should be unmuted.
Yeah, Greg.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Chuck Missler because about 15 years ago I downloaded a lot of his lectures. And I've got a list of them here. I was able to pull them up. There's 56 total lectures that I have. I can't tell you what date I downloaded them. It was probably 2004, 5, 6 area time period. And then while I was in the queue, I looked up and he had a ministry called the, see if I can pronounce it.
Koinonia House.
Yeah, say that again.
Koinonia, and that's the Greek word in 1 John translated fellowship. We have fellowship one with another. Koinonia. Koinonia, koine, is the Greek word for common. For example, the Bible, the New Testament, is written in koine Greek. That's the common or the vulgar Greek. It means the Greek that everybody spoke, in common. That's the word koinonia, and that's why he named it the Koinonia Fellowship. It was out of Sand Point, Idaho for a few decades, and then he moved to New Zealand and passed away not too long ago.
Okay, well, I'd just like to read out some of these titles and then turn it over to the next guy. You might find them interesting. I've got them sorted in alphabetical order. And the first one is a Daniel introduction, and Daniel chapter 1 up to chapter 5, chapter 6. He's got Daniel Mystery Babylon, Daniel the Magi. Chapter 7, Daniel European Update, Daniel chapter 8. Then it jumps to Armor for the Age of Deceit, and there's 4 lectures there. Betrayal of the Chosen, 2 lectures. How to Study the Bible, there's at least 4 there. Magog Invasion, another 3 lectures. Monuments, Sacred or Profane, is another of his series. And the last one I have is The New World Order, part 1 through 4. So I have these. If anyone would like to get them in their collection, we could probably arrange to get them to you.
Thanks, Greg. And again, Chuck seems like a nice fellow. I've never met him. I've listened to him. He does a lot of research. He notices things that, as an engineer, he's pretty good at it. Other things other people don't necessarily notice. I guess his mind has been acclimated to that. He brings out a lot of detail, but his premises, some of his fundamental premises, are wrong in my humble view, and I don't follow that. And again, it comes back to veneration, utter veneration of the people today that call themselves Israel. And they are not the Messiah. Jesus Christ is the Messiah, and that's to be our focus. Greg, thanks. I have another comment here I'll read. Getting on to this. Matt says, that is an appropriate link to experimentation, aliens he calls them, blood harvesting, and more than 700,000 missing children every year as a part of a plan. And the 700,000 missing children, harvesting blood and other things, this is not theory. The Clinton Foundation was involved in this heavily, and it'll fool you. You've got to be in touch with the idea that men are evil. One of the people in the Clinton Foundation deeply involved in harvesting children out of the Caribbean, where people are poor and there are no records and children disappear, was a fundamentalist Baptist woman with her husband out of Caldwell, which is right by Boise, Idaho. It's dark out there, very dark. Don't be fooled. Again, don't be fooled. Anyone else in the queue? Dan. Dan.
Yes, there is. Greg, you mentioned you wanted some recordings. If you could email me the dates, I probably have those. And then I still owe Barry some recordings too. So I haven't forgot about it. Okay, Paul? No. Paul, you should be unmuted. Welcome.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, Brent, what you've been talking about. I got interrupted today, so I came on late. I despise that, but anyway, that's the way it is. This verse 41, two grinding by the mill, the one becomes taken and the other left. Now, I want to clarify that. The other left, that's forgiven? That means forgiven?
I'm glad you said that, because that's so different. We need to say it again. That word there is the word translated forgiven in much of the New Testament. I went through a list. I think the word's used 241 times, if my memory serves me correct. Let me check here again. I think that was it. This verse is dubious at best, is the point that I try to make here. In other words, it could be translated left, but not in the sense of left over or left behind. Not in that sense. That the word can't mean that. There's a word for that in the Greek tongue in the New Testament, but that's not it. This word here can be translated. The idea is that to try to put the fundamental meaning of the word in perspective that is always there every time it's used, the idea is you're left alone. For instance, if God forgives a man, that stresses the idea is that he does not do to him that which he otherwise could have done by law if he wanted to. He had a right to do. He leaves him alone. He leaves him alone. So the word has the idea here, forgiven, is to be left alone by the judge. You're sprung, you're cleared, you can walk. All of those words, you can walk, you're sprung, you're cleared, all mean you're left alone. It's different ways of saying the same thing. You could translate here, it is within the ambient, the scope of the possible meanings, and one, left alone. But if you say left alone, there's no way, given the sense of the English words, there's no way that it doesn't give the impression that you're left behind or left over, that you're the remnant. The remnant. And that is not what this means. What this means is that, and this is my conclusion, that God has not done to you what he has every right to do. And the one that is taken is not the one that is taken to make safe. It's the one that's taken to be destroyed. That's my conclusion. Because the calculus of the idea of the word is to be left alone and not judged, not the sentence not carried out on you. But this is used to say that God's man is taken out, and therefore the other fella is left there, and he'll be taken through the judgment, and God's man will not be. That's contrary to the large scheme of what the Bible says about tribulation. God's people go through tribulation unceasingly in small ways and big ways. And in the Bible, never does God promise not to take us through the hard times. And so, yes, that's what I'm saying. It means to be that God will not do to that one that's by the mill that is not taken away. God will not do to him what he otherwise has every right to do. Destroy him. Back to you, Paul.
Boy, that's just the opposite what I was taught.
Oh, that's right, it is. But what I'm anxious to find out, it seems you're from that rare bird called Reformed Calvinism. And you grew up that way. What were you taught?
Well, this was just part of the dispersion or the end times, of course. And, the one who is taken is the one saved.
Yeah.
The one who is left is the one who has passed by the great judge. That's what I was. So it's just a 180-degree turn.
It is, but with the same result, probably, because God destroys one and doesn't destroy the other. But the question is, which one is the one being destroyed? See?
Yeah.
That's the question. That's the question, and it seems to me to be consistent with the whole overview of tribulation. That it has to be the other way around. Second, the words permit that. Clearly permit that. And not only permit it, I think it's more compelling that way, given the context, because he says right after that, stay awake, because ye know not by evidence what kind of hour your Lord comes. Given that the head of the household, verse 43, had known by evidence what kind of a watch the thief would come, he would have watched. And then you look back through history and you say, well, who is saved? The ones that watch. The ones that watch. Now, I realize there are problems with my point of view. I understand that. And I'm sure you'll start thinking about it, and you'll say, no, Brent's got a problem here. And we can talk about that. But one thing I know for sure, this I know for sure, this verse is dubious at best because of the two possibilities. What more, if you were taught that in your Reformed world, the world you grew up in, Dutch Reformed world, how did the Dutch Reformed people square that and say, with this idea of the rapture, and say, but this is not the rapture, because you didn't believe in that, did you?
No.
Well, then what did you call this? If this is not a rapture, what is it? If you take it that way, what is it?
Well, the end times.
Well, yeah, it's the end times, but when one fellow's taken, just like that, he's out in the field and he's gone, you folks didn't call that the rapture?
No, it was it was just a matter of the Lord using His perfect judgment of who He wants.
Okay.
And I know just an example. My brother's brother-in-law was very a learned man.
Okay.
And him and a professor from their seminary, they pulled up stakes and they moved to Washington State. They hid for the hills.
How's come?
Well, the end time. It was time to go.
So what hill?
Had to get the higher ground, you know.
What? What hill? What set of hills did they head to?
Well, I don't know, the mountains, I guess. They're still there.
Are they still holding?
Only they realized that they made a mistake.
Oh, did they admit it?
I never heard them admit it outright, but by their behavior and by their humble appearance, yes. They sold everything here, moved up there, and they farmed with horses, no electricity. They were there waiting for the end to come. And these were learned men.
Oh,
I mean, there were no slouches.
And I want to add, too, that this is for the rest of the listeners. People who study the Bible view the Dutch Reformed people as the most accurate of theologians, and have since the Reformation. And they are. And they always have been. There are some things that they don't have that people in the English-speaking world did have because of their cultural circumstances that I think are important. But it's no accident that the Dutch people are the preeminent engineers of the world. And again, they brought that to America, and that's been their preciseness in thinking, their habit of it, has been one of the cultural influences that has contributed to our greatness. But that doesn't mean that enables a fella to always know the truth and come to the right conclusion. But it is something to pay attention to. These two fellows you knew, one was a relative, they decided, the end's coming, we're out of here. Well, that is the theme of what Jesus Christ is talking about here. One thing I noticed, though, Paul, and I throw this out, I think I mentioned it last time, Jesus Christ does not tell us to head for the hills too soon, because no man knows the day or the hour. But when you see these things happening, see, you don't know the day or the hour. God does not lay things out in a calendar for us, but He does it according to events that we'll see. And when you see this event, what's the next event? Well, He tells us what the next event is. And when you see that event, well, then what's next? He tells us what's next. And then He tells us what to do in response to those events. But He doesn't tell us to get out before those events happen. And that's what I see to be the mistake often made. Gary North, very learned man himself. He was chief of staff for Ron Paul when Ron Paul was in Congress, his first go-around. And studies the Bible very hard. He's an economist, a PhD. But he moved during Y2K, he moved to the hills of Arkansas. And don't know that was necessary, doesn't live there now. One of his daughters married another fellow there that I got to know in later years. And been a great marriage. And they wouldn't have got married if Gary hadn't done that. God works in mysterious ways, but that doesn't mean that Gary did the right thing, and I'll leave that up to him. I've never heard him say one way or the other, but I don't know that that's the right thing to do. In other words, he may have misread things. Let's not misread what's going on. Remember, the people in Jerusalem took heed. This is a good example. They took heed to what Jesus Christ said when they saw the Roman general in their land coming down to what they knew was sure doom of the city of Jerusalem, and it was. They got out, and they saved their lives. When the angels came to Sodom and Gomorrah, they told Lot and his family, get out. If you don't, you're going to suffer the judgment. You've got to get out of the place of judgment. But it was right down to the end. God does not call us to leave this world and become monks, monkery, lock ourselves behind walls and not have any contact with the rest of the world. He calls us to get out at the right moment. And He tells us, be forewarned. He tells us exactly when you see this happening. Well, back to you, Paul.
Yeah, well, like I say, brains is not everything, but these were nice fellas, good Christian men the way it appeared, and yet they got sidelined. But anyway, I think they see the error of their ways. So. One more thing, Brent, if you got time. I heard a lecture years ago on the subject of organ transplants.
Uh-huh.
And as we talked about today, Randy brought up, that professor of theology was against organ transplants. And he brought in, God, I can't remember now, different texts of the Psalms, like my inwards, relating to our inwards, stuff like that. And he sort of proved, he thought, that it is wrong to have organ transplants.
Okay.
So my question is, what do you think about that?
I never thought about it enough to think it was wrong. I know plenty of people, as you have and our other listeners have, that have had heart transplants. Well, a handful of people I've known in my life. And I know people that have had liver transplants. Matter of fact, I have a cousin, first cousin once removed, that is losing her liver. Within a few days, she's scheduled to go in and take it out because it's corrupted somehow. She won't need another one, we don't think. She'll have one left, and she's not exactly young anymore. But if she needed another one, then what she would do is get on a list, and people do this routinely, and they wait for the next liver that would fit. Do I see something wrong with that? Just on the surface, I don't. No. And I don't think you can point to any verse or passage in the Bible that says clearly, point blank, don't do this. Now, I'm sure there are lots you could use to say it does appear that way, but if you can't find at least one passage that says something point blank and clearly whereby you can interpret other passages on the same subject, then I would say you probably ought to back off. that's too much speculation. Again, that's why we say on Saturdays in our contracts class, we read a text of legal significance out of the Bible that has to do with contract and agreements and consideration, and write 3 sentences of what you know absolutely for sure, no speculation, and 3 sentences of what you absolutely know for sure, no speculation. We, as God's creatures, He wants us, His people, to be in the habit of not speculating as much as focusing on fact. Life is too vexing, and there are too many facts we don't know to spend our time speculating. And that's what I see with the ministry of Chuck Missler, as much as I can learn from him, and I can learn a lot, and Hal Lindsey, for example. But their whole ministry is based upon what I view as speculation. Speculation, and then they put it all together in a lead pipe cinch. They call it a lead pipe cinch of theology, the way things are going to be. I'm not willing to go there. I don't think they're right. Back to you, Paul.
Well, I can't cite any text right now, but I know there's text. Maybe Job, maybe in the Psalms, my bowels, and similar expressions like that. And I know he used those to prove his point. And when you take someone else's bowels or liver or heart, they're not your own. They go into the body which was created for your spirit. And you take another man, and it's going to affect you. So that was his point, and he, of course, it went on for an hour. I'd have to dig it up. I got it someplace yet. So, but anyway, I just want to get your thoughts on it. So, thank you.
Well, my thoughts on it, thanks, Paul. My thoughts on it aren't based upon me having studied it for years either. So I'm just telling you what I know about it and what I would think on the surface. But other people may have put time into it, and there may be verses that do say it point blank. I don't know. I haven't looked at the Bible from that perspective. But I do want to take this opportunity to, again, pound home I call it the fundamental principle, which includes the Bible, the greatest writing of legal significance, and that is that obscure passages on any given subject must be understood in the light of a clear passage on that subject, and never vice versa. And I see that happening a lot, vice versa. You take the obscure passage, such as baptism for the dead, for instance. I haven't read anybody that knows really exactly and can say for sure what Paul meant by what he said there, but I can see that there are people, namely the Mormon Church, that make that a foundational doctrine. Well, it's dubious at best. Dubious at best. Does it have meaning? Well, sure it has meaning. Is it clear as crystal in God's mind? Sure it is. And our problem in not understanding it, of course, comes back to our own stupidity, whatever, ignorance. But at the same time, I don't see that anybody's come up with a clear answer to that problem right there. We know what it can't mean from other clear passages in the Bible. We know what it can't mean. It can't mean that that salvation is by baptism, as they do teach. And not only that, that you have salvation after you're dead by the baptism of another man. It can't teach that. Why? There are clear passages that say that can't be true. Then what does it mean? And there's a missing factor here somewhere. Well, we don't interpret the whole Bible on the basis of an obscure passage. That's the point. And on that subject, we find a clear passage on that subject, and you can find some clear ones that point out what it cannot mean. It cannot mean. We're looking for the ones that can show us what it does mean. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it very much. Anybody else, Dan?
I wanted to chime in here with Heather's thought on the one taken and the one left, back to the wheat and the tares.
Okay. Okay, I think I see where you're going. Flesh it out.
Well, the tares are taken to the furnace and burned.
Yeah.
And the wheat is gathered to the the Lord's barn.
Ingenious.
So that we,
yeah,
so that we have the one taken, or the one left is in forgiveness. The wheat they're forgiven.
I got it. No, that's good. I'm glad she piped in. And I'm going to put that in a footnote. I'm going to put that in a footnote of that verse, because that's a good point, and it is something that is important to contemplate. And again, it comes back to the fundamental principle that God doesn't promise to take us out of the tribulation. Let me read some more comments. Folks are getting chatty here. I don't want to leave this out. We'll get close to the top of the hour. Let me, yeah, here we go. Chat, okay. Well, now I can't get it to work. Oh, let me try this. Oh, no. Well, for whatever reason, please, all participants are muted, it says. Well, I don't care. It won't let me look at my chat now, Dan and Randy, so I'm going to have to forego that. I don't know. Well, maybe this will do it. Hang on. No? Did I do that? Yeah, I just shut off the Q&A, Dan. I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out how to do this. And it's not. No? Now, let me try it again. No.
Yeah, I did that, Brent.
Oh, you did? Okay.
My internet went down, so it might have shut all the... I can't find the chat now either.
Oh, okay. I don't feel so bad. But we had comments there, and they looked important.
Yeah,
I got it.
Pretty good comments.
Oh,
Okay.
I got it. I don't know how it happened, but I got it. Let me go to it now. Okay, let's start at the bottom here. Eric says, better go to the top because I'm getting fouled up. Okay. Matt says, aliens that I believe are interdimensional beings or demons. Aliens. More than 700,000 missing children every year as part of a plan. Aliens that I believe are interdimensional beings or demons. I've read that too. Then the question comes, what are these interdimensional beings? And that was Chuck Missler's point. Chuck Missler goes to great lengths to describe the dimensions. By the way, he gives great illustrations on dimensions and how to understand them. Simple, but profound illustrations. He's good. The difference between two dimensions and what a person in two dimensions can see. All a person in two dimensions can see is what is on a plane, such as plane geometry, all the figures on a plane, lines, triangles, pentagons. That's all he can see. And if a three-dimensional figure, such as a cube or a sphere, passes through that dimension, well, the person in two dimensions, all he's going to see is a circle. As a sphere comes through his dimension, he's going to see a small circle get larger and then get smaller. That's a great illustration. Or a cube, he'll see a square if it comes straight through it. If it tumbles through, he'll see it changing shapes in two dimensions on the plane, length and width. Are there other dimensions? And that was his point. I believe that's true. There are other dimensions. I think you can show that. More than 1, 2, 3, 4. Some people say they have identified 7. Some physicists. So if they're in another dimension, you're not going to see them. Okay, Eric says, Laura Silsby got caught trafficking 33 children out of Haiti. I think was that the gal I was talking about, the Baptist? Let's see. 33 being a magic number for these freaks for various reasons. Well, maybe it isn't. I don't remember her name, but yeah, she was with the Clinton Foundation. He says this gal got caught trafficking 33 children out of Haiti. And then another fellow says Slick Willie went to Haiti and got her sentence lightened greatly. Then they changed Sylvie's last name, and she went to work for the company that manages the Amber Alert system. Can't make this stuff up, as they say. Linked heavily with the Clintons, she was. Yeah. Well, we're 1 minute from the top of the hour. Dan, if nobody else is in the queue, we ought to call it quits.
Okay.
Are we free to do that?
Nobody in the queue, so would you like Randy to close with prayer?
Yeah, I'd like to spread it around if I can. If Randy, will you do that? You still hear us good, assuming you can. Would you close in prayer? And remember, things that you think are important to remember. Just leave it at that. And let's ask God to walk with us this week.
Amen. If not, we're going to fall off in the side of the road in the pit.
Yeah.
Father, we come before you today, and we just thank you, Lord, for this time together, for Mr. Brent, Lord, and his perseverance and his, Lord, just tenacity to stay in your word and to teach us. And we'd ask your hedge of protection high around him and Susan, around all of us, Lord, and our families, that the enemy would be blinded to us and cast down from us, that you would give us the guidance, discernment, and direction, Lord, to see through the lies around us and to stay focused on you. Lord, we pray for those in ill health today, for Becky, for, Lord, those in need of your healing hand upon them, and that just you would move there in a mighty way. We pray for Miss Cheryl and her loss, Lord, today, and just comfort her and let her know, Lord, that you're there standing beside her to carry her through this. We'd ask, Lord, your discernment in these days ahead. And most of all, Lord, to stay focused on you and your word and walking in your narrow way, that we don't get distracted, Lord, by all the madness that we see happening around us. I pray, Lord, for President Trump, for him to stay in there and hang in, and Lord, just whichever way it goes, that the truth of everything would be revealed.
Yeah.
Just watch over us now, guide and direct in your perfect will. Have mercy upon us, and I humbly ask this in your blessed name, Yeshua, Jesus the Christ, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. There is no king but King Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Matt. Matt. Did I miss anybody? And the others that listened. I don't know who all they were, but thank you for joining us. And look forward to talking to you next week. Next Saturday is the contracts class at 8 o'clock Pacific, 11 o'clock Eastern, fill in the gap between. And join us then if you'd like, and remind you again of the trial at Everton, Missouri. Ted Weiland for the prosecution, Brent Allan Winters, yours truly for the defense. Is the Constitution of the United States biblical? As a general matter and as in particular matters. That's on the website, commonlawyer.com. May the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you. See you next week.
Thank you, Brent. Thanks, everyone, for coming.